Hey guys, welcome to Hope It Helps. And my guest on the show today is Mr. Guillaume Portalier.
Correct.
Yes, yes, I got it. Welcome to the show, Guillaume.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. So, Guillaume, you, like many of my other guests, we got connected through LinkedIn. And interestingly enough, you just told me that you found me through the platform that you built and that you developed as well, which is what we're going to be diving in a little bit today. So I thought that's really cool. I'm like, okay, clearly it works because it found me. Yeah, I think the work you do is pretty interesting. As someone in sales as well, I think a platform like Waalaxy, am I pronouncing that right? Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, perfect. Is something I wish I had a couple of years ago when I was doing sales. I think I was looking at it. I'm like, I could probably use it now for my business as well. So I thought it was just really interesting. So I want to talk to you about that. You know, the story behind Waalaxy, and also dive into a couple of more things from a sales perspective. And you know, I'm guessing anyone who created this kind of platform has a background in sales because otherwise, you wouldn't have maybe the need for this kind of tool. But before we get into everything, Guillaume, why don't you give all of us a little bit of background about yourself, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the co-founder and COO of Waalaxy. And as you mentioned, Waalaxy is a sales automation platform that is based both on LinkedIn and emails. And we created the tool 3 years ago, and so we went from zero to $6 million in annual recurring revenue.
Wow.
And yeah, we've learned lots of things along the way. We've made many mistakes as well. So I'm happy to share our journey.
Awesome, man. And thanks so much for sharing that with us. So interesting. Started 3 years ago. So was this sounds like this was came out of the necessity of COVID, or am I wrong?
Actually, it came out before COVID.
Okay.
Just a few months before. And you mentioned that I probably had a background in sales because otherwise I wouldn't have the need for such tool, which is part true, part false.
Okay. Okay.
To give you a bit of background of where it came from,
Sure.
The idea and everything. So we are four co-founders. Two of us are a business guy. So mainly I and my cousin, who also is the CEO, and two technical guys, so developers. And so 3 years ago, so a bit more than that, so 3 years and a half ago, we were working on a totally different project. We were working on a tool to help camps owner communicate with their clients. So here in the south of France, we have lots of camps. It's a bit of a niche market. I know there are some camps as well in the US, but you know, apart from Spain, Italy, France, and maybe the US, it's a very small market. And so we worked on that project for several months, almost a year. We've done pretty much every mistake that an inexperienced entrepreneur would do at the beginning, namely thinking that you have the best idea in the world, that the market is ready for your product, you are going to build something amazing without talking to potential clients. Obviously, this went bad, and yeah, so we were trying to find prospects and clients for our tool, and so we rapidly figured that the easiest way to do this would be to contact those people on LinkedIn, because you know LinkedIn has 500 million people on the platform, so whatever you're selling, it's absolutely certain that your prospects are on the platform. And we figured that it was quite tedious, you know, to manually invite people, sending them messages, etc. So we thought, I mean, one of the, I used to call that a mistake. Obviously, it was not in hindsight, but it was typically the thing we would do at the time. We were super unfocused. We would do many things at the same time. And one of those things was to try to automate this process of contacting people on LinkedIn. And so in a matter of a few weeks, we built a small tool that was not designed to be distributed. It was just, you know, an internal tool. And after to automate our LinkedIn prospecting, and after a couple of weeks, we were talking about this internal product to our network of entrepreneurs, and they were all like, "Oh, that sounds like a crazy product. May I try it?" Or and it was funny at the time because we had no clients on our initial project, and we thought, okay, so there's a product that we're trying to sell for like a year, and we struggle to find a single client, and then there's this product that we've built in like 2 weeks, and we don't even want to promote it, but many people want to buy it. And so we thought, oh, okay, maybe we are into something, and so from there it started. So at the time it was called Prospecting, which was the predecessor to Waalaxy. Maybe we'll come to that later on. And so we gathered some beta testers during the summer of 2019, and then on September 2019 we launched the product, and from there we've seen a crazy growth. And so obviously what at the start was just a side project for our main product became our main product.
That I love those kind of stories because it happened by out of necessity for yourself, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, there's not only is there interest, that means maybe there's a potential market for it here, and now look where you are 2.5, 3 years later, and now that's the business. So I love these kind of stories. I can relate to a certain extent. So with my business, so I do podcast consulting, so helping companies and brands launch podcasts. And I'd been running my podcast for about a year and 8 months, 9 months, and then people started asking me, here and there, oh, I want to start a podcast, blah blah blah. I'm like, so I'd help here, help there. Then my fiance's like, Khaled, you should charge these people, you know what I mean? If it's your friends, okay, fine, but like if it's some new person, I'm just trying to be helpful. But I didn't realize that, oh, maybe there is something here. And one thing led to another, kind of like you. I kind of fell into it by accident. One person's willing to pay, like, okay, and then there was another and another and another, and then out of nowhere you kind of have a business and some clients. So I totally relate to that story quite a lot. I wanted to get into Waalaxy a little bit because so when I was I worked in Amsterdam in sales for corporates and for startups from 2017 to 2020, and during that time, obviously, I was fresh into the field. I learned a lot about these kind of tools, the email finding tools, the automation tools. We used to use what was it? Sales Loft. That was a tool that we were using at the time. I'm sure you're familiar.
Oh, okay. I actually would be curious to have your feedback on the tool, because we have hundreds of competitors, among which we tend to be on the top tier, even the top 10, top 5, I would say. But there are really loads of other tools on the market. And, every tool sort of has his own niche into the market. For us, it's the easiness to use. So how the tool, we basically focus on make the tool as easy as possible. So that's our niche market, and we tend to have a lower pricing. So we focus more on solopreneur, freelancers, small business owners, and where SalesLoft, I think, tends to focus on enterprise sales. But it's so funny because we're kind of competing product, but at the same time we're so different. I mean, we're fully product-led growth, so you don't have to. We don't even have a sales team. You just onboard yourself using our tutorial videos. Then you have a support chat, and you pay without talking to us. I mean, not on the phone. And you have SalesLoft, and on SalesLoft, you don't even have any screenshots or video of how the product looks like. And when you go on their landing page, you have a very. I mean, for us French people, it's so different. It's so different the way we do marketing. And when you go on SalesLoft, it's like a video, like an inspirational video with someone. It's totally unrelated with the product in any way. And so for us, it's super weird. And I don't even know what SalesLoft looks like and what it does exactly, how it works. And for us, it's very strange because our focus is on the product. So anyway.
No, but that's an interesting point. That's kind of you kind of answered the question I was going to get into, because like you correctly said, there are a lot of competitors in this space. There's from companies like SalesLove to all the, to other CRM tools, the HubSpots and so on. So it is a big space. But it's interesting how you guys have approached it, that it is kind of a plug and play, and there's not too much input from me as the potential client in terms of being onboarded to the platform, using the platform, which makes both our lives, I think, a lot easier, because there isn't that in between. Like, you're not trying to, I don't have like the sales team selling me and then developing the contract and then, doing all these additional things that would come up in a lot of, potentially, if you're using the bigger platforms, even like Zoho and stuff. So I do have experience using a couple of the different ones. Honestly, look, I haven't, to be transparent as well, I haven't used your platform yet. It looks very interesting, and while I was doing my research, I'm like, I think this could be good potentially for my business. So I'm definitely gonna try it out. That's for sure. Maybe I'll be able to give you some better bit of feedback after that. But from my perspective, what I've seen so far is it seems pretty simple, seems intuitive. I like the analytics that you provide, that dashboard that you guys have kind of created, so you can see, how things are performing, what's going well. But I wanted to come back to something, and this is a personal thing as someone in sales. All right, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I know that email marketing still exists, and I know that's something that you guys you offer in your platform as well. Do you and my question, like, in my mind, the question I ask myself, I'm like, is email marketing dead now with all these other ways to engage with you, through digital platforms? So I work in sales for a digital agency on the side as well, so I understand, the digital side and targeting you through the Instagram and TikTok, and how specific you can be, and how the content can be a lot more engaging, maybe a lot more targeted. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how powerful do you think, or relevant do you think, email marketing still is today?
Yeah, so I think before starting this conversation, we should differentiate email marketing and cold emailing, which are two different things.
Okay.
And so what we hear by email marketing is basically using an email base of users or customers or maybe prospects, but some people that have given you their email addresses. And for example, email marketing for us is our transactional and drip campaign email we send to our users, for example, day 2 after they sign up, day 5 after they sign up. This for us is email marketing, so it's used to onboard you around the product, promote certain features, send you articles, interesting articles, basically nurturing our user base. And cold emailing is a totally different field. It's sending unsolicited emails to prospects to sell something.
Exactly.
Whether your service, your product, or an ID, or you want to meet someone, network. The use cases are almost endless, but the very difference is in the unsolicited. Because when you're doing email marketing, your prospects has at any point in time given you his or her email address, and they have the possibility to opt out, unsubscribe. You have an unsubscribe link in the description, and usually those emails are sent to thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of people. And cold emailing is a more targeted approach. You spend some time first, just because the email, you have to find the email yourselves, because the people didn't give you their email. So you have to spend some time retrieving the email in some way, and also segmenting your list so that you only send a few hundreds of email. and you have many points to bear in mind, especially around, of course, your copywriting. But before that, it's a bit technical, but all the DNS setup, and basically how you set up your email providers so that you maximize your deliverability rate, because email inbox are are meant to filter the unsolicited email, and so you have to go through that wall basically and make sure your prospects get the email. So I think it's the first distinction to have in mind. And then, is it dead? Certainly not. I think we've seen an increase in the use of those automation, and so you tend to receive more and more cold outreach. So it's not dead.
That's true.
So I would say, and you mentioned all the other digital platforms that exist, and I think all those way goes hand in hand, and so we tend to see, the more points of contacts you have with a prospect, and the higher chances are that your prospect will respond favorably anytime in the future. So, for example, you might start with an outreach message to a prospect, but then and then he or she will click on your links, for example, but even without really engaging with your platform or anything. But with all the tracking system, with the cookies, etc., you will be able to show this person maybe some Facebook ads, Instagram ads, TikTok ads, whatever. And so for sometimes weeks or even months, you have this person that sort of is around your product or have some reminders from some time. And then on the long term, the chances of this person having a good opinion of your products is increasing. And maybe this person doesn't really need your product or service at the time. But in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, sometimes years after that, they will have your brand in mind, and then when they will have the needs, that will be straightforward. Okay, I want to use Waalaxy, for example, because 1 year ago I had no need for sales prospecting, and now I have, and so that's the brand I know, and so I think it's not dead. However, you have a point in saying that. I think especially the LinkedIn part, because you have LinkedIn outreach and email outreach, and these are, again, I think, two different things, because LinkedIn outreach is so easier than email outreach, because on LinkedIn you have all those profiles. You don't even have to get their email addresses because you contact them on LinkedIn directly. And email is a bit different. You have some technical setup to set up. You have also the need to retrieve those email addresses. So people that are into the email, the cold emailing, are a bit more savvy, and so they know that they need to segment their list properly. They tend to have a better copywriting skills. But what we've seen in I would say the last 3-4 years is popularization of the LinkedIn outreach. And so yes, it's true that it works less now than maybe 4 years ago, where it was still niche and it was so easy to get replies and success with your LinkedIn outreach campaign, because people were not really aware that you could automate this. So with a very simple personalization, such as hey, first name, I've seen you work at company name, for example, very, very ultra basic. But 4 years ago, it was it was something you thought, oh, okay, this person is reaching out to me personally. It worked way better than email at the time, because at the time it was already known that you're not the only person to get this email.
Yeah.
But on LinkedIn it wasn't the case, and so yes, it's true that it evolves a bit on the LinkedIn side, and now you have to be more thoughtful in how you segment your list, who you're targeting, and also what message you write. So
yeah, I think you made a very good point that it sounds like from your perspective that LinkedIn has become what email marketing was a couple of years ago, in the sense of the difficulty in not only getting, like getting the prospect to open your message. I remember, so okay, we can dive deep into all this about what's the best way to do it. From the title, and then how personalized the message is, the length of the message, the frequency of how long you email them, the type of content that comes in each email. The opening email, the like last chance, so to speak. Email. I can see you smiling. You know what I'm talking about. And I know. So LinkedIn, I think, is a good thing to talk about because your tool is. I understand it's a sales prospecting tool, but one thing that I like when I was looking at it too is, yes, that while that is the goal of the tool, it also does have a secondary function, which is looks like it's a great network building tool, because it gives you the ability to reach out to a lot of different people that you might be interested in, certain titles or so on, at what in a very short time frame. And I think that is more of an indirect way to generate sales and like clients. And like you correctly said, just because you could connect with someone, like you were saying, or email someone like today, but then they don't need you right now. They're not interested. It's not on their radar. But you're around. You're active. They see you keep popping up. So when that need comes, boom, like, okay, let's reach out to Guillaume. I think he knows. He seems to know what's going on. One thing I've noticed with LinkedIn is, like, nowadays, now that I am, it's so funny when you change title and you're like, oh, like a sales associate, you don't get like any in mails, you don't get anything, and then you're like, oh, like founder or whatever, and you just get bombarded. Like, you must get it too. Like, and it's so, and sometimes I'm like, why did you think I was the right person for this? Like, I have no interest, not the right category, nothing at all. So I guess what I wanted to ask you now is, how has your experience been, from a success rate, I guess, with LinkedIn compared to email marketing, let's say over the last year, 2 years? What would that, discrepancy be?
Yeah, so interesting enough is, at the beginning we were using our tool intensively to generate our first sales, our first to get our first prospects and users. But now we don't do any sales prospecting anymore. So I wouldn't be able to tell you from our side,
Okay.
what are the differences. And the truth is, to be fully transparent, we don't even, at least not yet, we don't even really dive into our users' statistics, into their success rates on the email part and the LinkedIn part. The truth is, so we also do multi-channel prospecting, so send messages both on LinkedIn and via email. But our first tool, so prospecting at the time, was only on LinkedIn. And so when we built Waalaxy, we tried to add the email component. But for now, we are more known in the space as a LinkedIn outreach tool rather than an email outreach tool. And so for now, I would say only 15 to 20% of our client base really use the email feature. So the very bulk of our clients are only on the LinkedIn side. Yeah.
So it sounds like LinkedIn has become almost the new focus. This is the arena. This is where everyone is. And a good point that you made is, you don't have to, if you're using LinkedIn as as the approach, you don't need the email, because you can you can just search a name. You can find the profile. But I think you mentioned something which is important. I'd like you to just explain to us a little bit more. And for anyone in sales, I think this is useful in terms of how you're segmenting and like your mindset when you're reaching out and like doing this kind of prospecting.
Yeah, I think, and again, as people tend to be bombarded with messages and emails, you have a tendency to think that this does not work anymore because your attention is so scattered and you don't even read those messages anymore. But the truth is, everything, I think, so there are really two components in how a prospecting campaign will perform. The first is your copywriting skills, so your capacity to write a convincing message that will resonate with your prospects. And the other one is your segmentation. So before doing anything and using any platform, it's doing a bit of introspection and thinking hard about, okay, what am I selling and what pain am I solving, and who are the people that are interested by my product or my service. And this can take a bit of time, and it's not always straightforward. And sometimes you think you have a certain persona, but it turns out you have your real persona is another one. And I think we've all went through this, and us as well. And at the very beginning, we thought, okay, we're building a tool for growth hackers. And it was so funny because our first prospects were growth hackers, and they all told us, come on, man, you have a very simple product. You can only do invite and message on LinkedIn. I can do this since 10 years. I can automate this process. It's nothing revolutionary. And we were like, okay, so maybe they're not our ideal prospects.
Yeah.
And then we started to contact business developers, salespeople, and less tech savvy people, and we realized that those were our ideal prospect because they were not really tech savvy, and at the time, so again, it was 4 years ago, so the space was a bit different than now, but you needed a bit of technical skills to manage your sales prospecting and all the automation part.
For sure.
And so those people that were really focused on sales, they were super happy with using a very easy product. And so that's the first time we failed at finding who were our persona, at least in our first shot. And so that is the work that you need to do. And then once you have a clear idea of who you want to target, then you have to find those people. And it's not as easy as it might look, even on LinkedIn, because your prospects are on LinkedIn, but then you have to play with the filters to basically end up with a list of people that correspond, that matches those prospects. But it's not as easy as people think, because so obviously you need to use the Sales Navigator option on LinkedIn, because the standard LinkedIn search is just a crap. But even with the Sales Navigator that provides lots of filters, you don't have all the filters that, for example, Facebook would provide if you want to perform Facebook ads, where you can filter with a political opinion, very, very precise things. On LinkedIn, for example, you don't have a filter for, people who want to lose weight. So you have to think, okay, with those filters, how can I try to end up with a list of prospects that actually match, the results that I want to have. So, and that's very important. And I think most of the work is in finding the right people, because if you have the perfect message but you're targeting the wrong people, you better have the perfect message. It won't be interesting for your prospects. And on the opposite, if you are targeting exactly the right person, you won't need a perfect message to get an answer, an interest at least. Because the person is really in your target audience. And I can totally relate being on both sides. Yes, I'm receiving dozens and dozens of unsolicited messages per day on LinkedIn and also via email. And I would say 80 to 90% I don't even read, or I just screen. And I instantly see that I'm not the right person, so I don't read the message, let alone answer. But sometimes I screen and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm definitely in the right target. And then I answer, oh, I would be interesting to know more. Maybe we can have a call, etc. So I think if you manage to target the right people, it really works. But it takes a bit of time. It takes a bit of tweaking with the Sales Navigator filters and get to know the platform, LinkedIn namely. But I think these are the most important factors in how you manage your campaign, and yeah.
Yeah, I think so many great points there, Guillaume. First of all, I think you said it perfectly. The best message with the wrong audience, or the best audience with not the best message. I'd rather go for option two, because at least I know I'm getting to the people I want. And like you said, I think I believe that filtering and like searching and finding that is an art in itself, to be able to, it really is. And it's not something you get good at all at once. Like in your example, at the beginning, you guys were hitting, the wrong people. Even with my business, we've been running digital ads for the last few months. And then, we like to run it for a quarter to see, is this the right target? Is it the right people? Besides the number of leads, these are the kind of clients we're looking for? And it takes time. It takes time to adjust. It takes time to be like, oh, we're targeting corporates. Okay, so we need to change the branding. We need to change the messaging. I think it's an ongoing iterative process. But once you find it, once you can lock it down and you test it out and you're like, oh, okay, this is proven now. We know this is our target market. I think that takes care of a lot of the work for you, because they're going to get what you're talking to them about. And not only that, they're interested in what you're selling to them or potentially selling to them. One thing about LinkedIn, and this is something that I think back to my days when I was working in sales. So one of the companies I worked for was a med tech startup. So LinkedIn is a very interesting world, because email marketing, kind of like what you're talking about, the difference between email marketing in terms of updating your clients, existing client lists, or people that are, or giving them newsletters. That's fine. You're keeping them engaged. But cold, like you said, is completely different. And that, so we were doing cold, and I would reach out on LinkedIn as well. So the cold, would run by itself every once in a while. I would adjust it to tweak to see what the open rates would be, what would the responses, and so on. LinkedIn I had a different approach, which would be, my approach was, I'm gonna be active, post industry relevant stuff, and then I'm gonna just reach out to connect with you, be like, hi, my name is Khaled. I'm constantly posting stuff about our industry. Would love to connect. That's it. So I was you're trying to get in without selling yet. And I think there's an art on how can you connect with, how do you sell someone without selling them? You know what I mean? Because any in-mail, kind of like what you were talking about, if I get an in-mail, automatically I know I'm trying to be sold something, which is true, besides of how it's usually like, hi Khaled, we noticed you are blah 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 blah, and so on. So I guess I'm curious from your perspective. It's not something that I've figured out 100% yet. I think you always learn from it. So how can you come across as not too salesy? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying, and that's very interesting, because most salespeople I talk to tend to have the same idea and the same approach, and I have a totally different one, and quite the opposite. And I will explain. The common advice that you have in sales is, when you're doing sales prospecting and cold outreach, don't look too salesy. Try to be interested in your prospects' problems before everything else. Try to engage the conversation, and then slowly but surely you'll have the opportunity to sell whatever you're selling. And so I see it the other way around, because as in the last 3 to 4 years, we've seen an explosion in the cold outreach and everything that goes around, and especially this advice. you tend to see now people that send you messages in how, hey, I'm interested in what you're doing. I would be happy to connect. And then they follow up, hey, is this a problem for you? I would be curious to have your opinion, blah, blah, blah. And, when you get 20 messages such as this one per day, you're not fooled. You know that this person will sell you something at some point. And I don't think people are replying to those messages because they know what will happen in the end. And I tend to see the opposite. And for example, so again, now we're not prospecting really anymore, but back in the days when we were promoting our products, and we had a small side products that was basically a LinkedIn messaging overlay, so a LinkedIn messaging tool that would replicate the LinkedIn messaging, but by adding other features that were quite interesting, such as the possibility to have saved replies, because when you do prospecting, you tend to repeat the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
In the answers. You also have a tag system, a follow-up system, and a reminder system, where a snooze, some sort of a snooze feature, and anyway, and so when we were trying to get beta testers for this product, our approach was very different. We would be ultra direct with our messaging and messages. Sorry, and so what we would do is, we would use a basic invitation plus message sequence, and in our invites we would say, hey, first name, something like, hey, first name, do you manage more than 10 messages per day on LinkedIn? If so, you might be interested in Piwa, so the product called Piwa. It's a LinkedIn messaging platform that adds the feature ABC. If you're interested, here's a link to sign up to our free beta product. And then a follow-up message, I don't remember, but basically a follow-up that would, ask if the person has read the message, or anyway, I don't remember, but that's not the point. The point is really that, and this goes against, I would say, most of the common advice in sales, because you're a direct sales, you have a link in your message. But the thing is, so we started with a question, and that helps instantly segments. So either the person is managing less than 10 messages per day on LinkedIn, and so it's no problem yet. She or he won't be interested, and that's fine, because our product is not for those type of people. But to the contrary, if the person actually manages more than 10 messages per day on LinkedIn, it's absolutely certain that what we were about to say will resonate with them, because it's such a pain that this would resonate. And our call to action was a link to sign up for a free beta, a free product. So it's not as if we were about to sell directly something. It was, in the end, it was for a free product. And so this worked very well, because first so for the listeners that are not really aware, but on LinkedIn, if you want to send a message to someone, you first have to send an invitation, and then the person has to accept the invitation. But it turns out that you can actually send a small messages with your invite, less than 300 characters. And by adding our prospecting message in this short note invite, we were able to put our message to the totality of the prospect that we were contacting. So this helped a lot as well. And yeah, I think it worked well, because again, if I'm on the other side, if I have someone that is trying to reach out to me to talk, basically, I don't have time to talk to strangers. So either you have something, I'm the correct target, and you have something that can interest me, and you're just pitching it to me, but by staying very short in your message, a clear value proposition, a clear explanation of why you think I'm the right person, and a clear call to action, which is basically the structure that we had in our prospecting message. And if it takes less than 15 seconds for me to read it and understand that indeed I might need it, and that's fine. I will book that call. I will answer to know more. But if you're trying to reach out to me and have an answer to me, and how is it going? Is it what do you think about? And I won't even reply because I know what will happen in the end, and you didn't provide me with a clear explanation of why you wanted to reach out to me. So again, everyone has his own view on this, but I think it's interesting to also has this totally opposite view.
I think, I think that last sentence is probably the most important one, which is, I think there's different schools of thought with this, So I see both sides. For example, I see one side, which I have done and which happens to me a lot these days, which is, just trying to connect, so there's no stress on you to, connect with me, to get you in, try to build that relationship, whatever, so that when the time comes that I feel like, okay, now I can sell to you, I'll do that. That's one thing. So that's one side. Your side is a lot more direct. It's like, you're reaching out, I'm trying to sell you straight away. This is what is this a problem you struggle with? This is what we offer. If you're interested, let's have a conversation. Let's do that. So in both, I see advantages and disadvantages in both, which obviously there is. On my side, and what I've realized now, because once you've worked in sales, and you would know this too, what a salesy email, like, what that feels like, the taste of that message, how it's like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. I've sent these myself. I think with my way, and now being on the other side of it, now, is what I don't like is, it feels, if you've connected with me in that way, you're just like, oh, Khaled, I like what you do, let's connect, whatever. And then you try to sell me. I feel like in a way you haven't, but I feel like I've been tricked. You know what I mean? And that really puts me off. I'm like, oh, it's just there was no genuine. It was not genuine, your connection. You know what I mean? So that's one side. Your side is interesting. I haven't looked at it from that perspective. And I do like it. I prefer a more direct approach, and in your way it's very simple. What I like about your way is that there's no bullshit here. Like, I'm selling to you, and it does one of two things: either you're interested, or you're not. So no matter what the situation is, you still get a better understanding of either this is not the right prospect, this is not the right type of client, and so on. And when it works out, it works out. So it's great, and I think it helps clear a lot of the wrong people out the way to get you to the people you want. So that's a very refreshing approach, I would say.
Yeah, and to complete what you were saying, and to be fair, there's no both tactics works.
Of course.
It really depends on who you are, what you're selling, and who you're targeting. And of course, because in our case it worked, because what I didn't mention also is we were still very small at the time, and I was doing most of the automation, but obviously I had tons of other things to do. So I would say, to be fair, that the very reason I would do that is I simply didn't have the time to engage the conversation. So I needed a direct approach with a link, because I wasn't even able to entertain a conversation. So that was the main reason. And it was a free product, so I would not do a demo for a free product. We don't even do demos for our paying product now. So can you imagine for a free product?
Wow, okay.
But so that's one thing. So if you're selling a very scalable product that costs nothing or almost nothing, it makes sense. It might make sense to use this direct approach and target as. And also it depends on who you're targeting, and if you have an unlimited number of prospects or not. In our case, obviously, as you can imagine, people that are receiving and managing more than 10 messages per day on LinkedIn, this represents an infinite number of prospects, clearly.
Yeah.
But if you're selling something that has a very finite number of prospects, I don't recommend this approach. And then the other approach makes much more sense. And if you're selling a product or a service that costs in the dozens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars per year, obviously
of course,
you want to get into the conversation, trying to be interested by your prospect. But what I would say is, if you're into this technique, then you need to be 100 and 150% into it, and namely almost don't automate it, because if you're sending a message that resembles every other message, you know, you need to, if you want to really engage with the conversation, you need to find a way to personalize your message so that only your prospect could have received this message, because otherwise, you know, nobody is really tricked by this anymore. Again, you want to engage the conversation, but you probably send this to hundreds of other people. So I don't think you really want to speak to me precisely. But if you manage to, either by ultra personalizing your message or manually contacting those people, if you manage to ultra personalize your approach, and then I think it helps to really engage the conversation. And then in this case, it makes much more sense to go into the indirect approach. So yeah, it was just to complete a bit.
No, and I think that's a very important point that you mentioned. In the sense of it's very context relevant. It's relative, you know, to your industry, to the product, to the size of it, to whatever. So, you know, different approaches are there for different reasons and so on. And these aren't the only two. I'm sure there's another million that people do. We're just speaking about the ones that we both have done and how they're different. But one thing with yours is what really stuck out to me was time. Like now, like you said, my attention span is, you know, I can barely watch like a couple minute TikTok anymore, because I'm just like, you know, endlessly scrolling. So time is a very important factor. So, you know, being conscious of someone's time, taking that into account with whatever approach you use or however you want to do it, is an important thing. I just have a few more questions for you, Guillaume. So this is one that everyone, there's no right answer, and everyone has a different perspective. So from one salesperson to another, to get your thoughts on this. So as you know, in sales, you could do everything right. Your outreach was on point. Your follow-up was perfect. You could have done everything right to manage a prospect and to manage a potential client. And sometimes it just doesn't work out. Projects get postponed. They change their mind. They go with someone else, whatever. So there's only so much you can control, and I'm very aware of that. And I think in general, salespeople are. So taking that concept and bringing it into the conversation of the importance of having a funnel, and not just a funnel, an optimized sales funnel. So if I could do everything right and it still not work out, okay, fine. So having an optimized funnel, does that mean that is the optimized funnel just a numbers game? I'm not just talking about quality. Of course, the quality is important, but you also need volume, because of, like, let's say you have 100 people in the funnel, you speak to like 50. Of the 50, 20 are genuinely interested. Of the 20, you know, 10 are really, really want to do it. And of the 10, you might sign like 5. So does it become that sales, in a way, not exactly, is purely a numbers game?
I think it is. Though, again, it depends on the size of your market. If you have a very limited market, the stakes are obviously higher, because overall having a super optimized funnel only serves and is only useful in optimizing the number of clients you will have, starting with X prospects. But then so you can you can work on optimizing your funnel, and you should do that, obviously. But then at some point you're better off simply adding more people into the funnel, rather than tweaking some bits here and there to, you know, have 1% more answer rate. I do think that in the end, it's only a matter of numbers. But again, it depends on the size of your market, what your sales process looks like, because in our funnel, it's really scalable because we don't have any salespeople intervening at any point in time. So whether we put 100 people or 100,000 people in the funnel, for us it's almost the same, not exactly, but almost the same amount of work, of human work. But if you're into a sales process that involves salespeople that provide the demos, account manager that are here to really have the deal, make the deal. It's a different matter, because if you put too many people into the sales funnel, you might end up with the need of more people, so more cost, and then it changes a bit the equation. So yeah, it depends on first the size of your market, and also the structure of your sales process. But I think yes, in a lot of cases, in the end, it's a matter of sheer volumes.
Yeah. I think you made a good point though. I'm glad we agree on the I guess the numbers part, but I think an interesting point that should be within that kind of sentence is the size of your market, because that's going to really affect how you're going to approach it. But like you said, you can only get to a certain point of tweaking and optimization before you're going to have almost diminishing returns in a way if you're not adding anyone else into the thing. So no, I think that's a really, really good point. Guillaume, I just have two more questions for you. These are questions I ask all my guests. First of all, if you're looking back either personally, professionally, at your life, whatever, if I ask you the question, what are you most proud of for yourself, what would you say?
Yeah, I think it would be to have created. We didn't really talk about it, but we have a very special culture, I would say. And this stemmed from the fact that we are very, very young. I'm 28 years old, and I'm the oldest guy, oldest founders at least. And so when we started the company, we were like 21, 22, 23, and 25, something like that.
Wow.
And so we had no experience whatsoever, but we had a vision of how the professional work looks like, because our parents are working in classic companies, and we figured that this was not really our ideal professional vision. I mean, this was not the type of companies we would be happy to work with and work in, and so we tried to implement a very special culture of responsibilities, freedom. And I know it sounds bullshit, and every people and every entrepreneurs and startups tell you the same story. I tend to tell you the same story, but I think we went quite far into this, and most people that come in our company, whether for when they in our hiring process, for example, even though we speak a lot about our values, our culture, and how crazy we are, for example, we have a swimming bowl. I'm not sure how you say in English, but basically a pool with like a 25,000 ball in it.
Oh, okay, like a ball pit kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And we, like the children plays in McDonald's when they are 5 or 6 years old, and we have a hammam. We have like we do crazy things, like we light barbecue with like a flamethrower, and so all that to say that I think one of the proudest thing is this culture that we've created.
Yeah. No, I think that's really humbling to hear, man. And I think I can't believe you guys started it when you did, and at like the age that you guys have. Like I would have never been able to do anything anywhere close to that at that age. I'm about to turn 32, and only now, and I'm like, oh, okay, now I'm like ready to do these kind of things. But kudos to you, man, and congrats on the culture that you've created. I've worked at startups too, other startups as well, and I know that it's always been my kind of culture, compared to like a corporate thing. And I guess just my little tip of advice from the places I work: just do everything you can to maintain that culture. As you guys grow, that's the only thing I would say. And for my last question, Guillaume, what is the message you'd like everyone to take home with them today?
Um, I would say it's a bit funny because we did not our beginning, but it's be focused. Whatever you're trying to do, whether you want to start a company or even be better at what you do. In the end, I think it's a matter of focus and perseverance as well.
Couldn't have said it better myself, man. Focus and perseverance, like you said. I think you could read and watch and listen to 10 million people and people who have built companies, been successful, or no matter what areas, it always took a combination of those two things. So I think that's a message that everyone can relate to. Guillaume, wanted to say thank you so much for coming on the show, man. This has really been a lot of fun. It's fun, like I don't always it's fun to go back and forth on like sales ideas and techniques and your experience and mine. So it's been a lot of fun and definitely learned a lot of new things. I will 100% be a user of this tool. I'm definitely going to test it out, and I'll actually give you some proper feedback on what I think and how it's worked for me. But for Guillaume, for people who want to reach out to you, work with you guys, connect with you, where can we get in touch?
Yeah, sure. So, as my name is very hard to pronounce for a non-French speaker, I would simply provide you with a link to my LinkedIn profile, and people can reach out to me on LinkedIn. And also, I will give you a link if people want to know more about Waalaxy, and also get 2 months for free for the product. So I'll give you those two links, and you'll be able to share it with the audience.
Awesome. Perfect, guys. You heard it here. If you're interested in reaching out with Guillaume, you can check him. You can find him on LinkedIn. If not, go to Waalaxy WAALAXY.com to find out about their platform and more about what they do if you want to test it out. And Guillaume is also being very generous and giving you guys a link with 2 months free. So make sure to stay tuned to that. Guillaume, thank you so much, man. This has been really fun.
Super cool. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. Guys, so everyone listening, thank you so much. As always, please make sure to like, share, follow, and subscribe to the podcast at hope.it.helps on Instagram. And as always, guys, hope it helps. Peace.